This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Graduate schools in the United States are reporting a 9% increase in applications from international students this year. The increase is the same as 2 years ago. Last year's gain was 11%. China, Mexico, and Brazil showed the biggest increases in applications to enter master's and doctoral programs this fall. Engineering is the top area of study for international students and had the biggest increase in applications. Gains in business and physical and earth sciences were close behind. Life sciences showed no growth in the latest survey by the Council of Graduate Schools. The survey includes the top 5 countries that send graduate students to the United States, plus Mexico and Brazil. The top 5 are China, India, South Korea, Taiwan, and Canada. Applications from China climbed 18% this year. That was down from last year. India's number increased just 2%. Applications from South Korea and Taiwan decreased by 1 to 2%. Applications from Africa were down 5%, while the Middle East and Europe showed growth. Council President Deborah Stewart says final results will not be available until the summer. She pointed out that applications do not necessarily convert to enrollment. About 47% of all international applications to U.S. graduate schools come from students from China. But the share of the applicant pool that actually ends up enrolling in U.S. graduate programs is lower. Ms. Stewart says last fall, for example, 29% of all international graduate students were from China. This year is the 7th year of big increases in applications from China, where Ms. Stewart points out that more and more students are finishing college. There is tremendous growth in the undergraduate population in China. But she also notes that more people apply to graduate school during difficult economic times. So it certainly is possible, she says, that these very exceptionally strong numbers could be a reflection of recession experiences in China as well. George Ofosu from Ghana is working toward a doctorate in political science at the University of California, Los Angeles. He says he was attracted to UCLA's coursework, libraries, and other resources, including financial aid he would not have had at home. He says it was an ideal opportunity for him to, 1, get training, and 2, get some funding to pursue his studies. He calls his experience really phenomenal. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. For more stories about studying in the United States, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, find our podcasts on iTunes, and watch our captioned videos at the VOA Learning English channel on YouTube.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Thousands of protesters, including teachers, students, parents, and pro-democracy activists, marched in Hong Kong in late July. They were protesting a plan to teach Chinese patriotism classes in Hong Kong schools. Organizers said 90,000 people marched to the government headquarters, but police gave a lower estimate of 32,000. The Hong Kong government says the classes are meant to build Chinese national pride. The government plans to require the classes in elementary schools starting in 2015. But the government is urging schools to voluntarily launch the program when schools reopen this September. The curriculum includes a teaching booklet called the China Model. It praises the one-party rule of the Communist Party. However, it says nothing about the crushing of pro-democracy protests in Beijing in 1989. Ting Qing Chan has been teaching primary school for 38 years. He says he was not persuaded by the booklet. I don't even believe the content myself, so it's difficult to teach my students, he says. Chan Ye Long, a 9-year-old student in the march, said, China wants to unify Hong Kong. Our next generation only knows how great China is, but not the bad stuff. Protester Paul Young, a parent of 2 children, says he worries that too much one-sided education is not good for the mental development of young people. The protest was another sign of public concern about what critics see as the Chinese government's interference in the former British colony. Britain returned Hong Kong to China on July 1st, 1997. China promised to let the territory largely govern itself. This year, more than 100,000 people joined a pro-democracy march on July 1st. It was the largest such gathering in 8 years. Many of the protesters demanded that the city's new leader resign. Lang Jun-ying took office earlier that day. He was chosen by a mostly pro-Beijing committee. Willie Lam is a China specialist in Hong Kong. He says people in Hong Kong have lost trust in the Hong Kong government. He says they are afraid the administration of Lian Jun-ying will take orders from Beijing to support the Communist Party and not spread knowledge of China in a fair way. To read, listen, and learn English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find our caption videos at the VOA Learning English channel on YouTube. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Imagine that you have lost your job. You could start a sewing business at home if you had a better sewing machine and a little money to advertise, but you cannot get a loan from a bank. In recent times, many people in similar situations have received loans from student microfinance groups. Such groups make small loans for business or personal use. 12 of the organizations are part of a national network called the Campus Microfinance Alliance. The Alliance provides financial aid, technical advice, and training programs for its member groups. Each group has between 10 and 70 volunteers, many of them college students. They have enabled hundreds of people across the United States to launch small businesses. Vanessa Carter is director of the Alliance. She says bad economic times have sped the growth of the college microfinance movement. This really got started because students were walking off campus. It was the height of the economic recession, and they were seeing boarded up businesses and the effects of high unemployment firsthand. In Iowa, a student microfinance group at Grinnell College helps people both locally and internationally. The group started in 2007. At that time, Grinnell student Jeff Raderstrong and some friends raised more than $600 from other students. The Saturday night Grinnell tradition of missing a meal to help others enabled the group to make loans through the international microfinance organization kiva.org. The Social Entrepreneurs of Grinnell, SEG, was launched. Later, SEG moved toward making loans directly to international partners. But as time passed, the group started helping people in Iowa. Jeff Raderstrong remembers how that developed. It sort of really quickly became clear that there was a lot that we could do in the community, in the Grinnell community. Because, you know, the town itself, there is some wealth, but there is a lot of poverty. And it is a lot of rural poverty. Mark Root Riley was another early member of SEG. He says the group recognized that small targeted loans at 0% or low interest could help local residents. SEG money has helped people make car payments so they can get to their jobs. It also helped patients in need of temporary housing near the medical center where they receive treatment. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti. Get more news and learn English at voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Not everyone who teaches in a college or university is a professor. Many are instructors or lecturers. In fact, not even all professors are full professors. Many of them are assistant or associate professors or adjunct professors. So what do all of these different academic titles mean at American colleges and universities? Get ready for a short lecture, especially if you are thinking of a career in higher education. Professors usually need a doctoral degree, but sometimes a school will offer positions to people who have not yet received their doctorate. This person would be called an instructor until the degree has been completed. After that, the instructor could become an assistant professor. Assistant professors do not have tenure. Tenure means a permanent appointment. This goal of greater job security is harder to reach these days. Fewer teaching positions offer the chance for tenure. Teachers and researchers who are hired into positions that do offer it are said to be on the tenure track. Assistant professor is the first job on this path. Assistant professors generally have 5 to 7 years to gain tenure. During this time, other faculty members study the person's work. If tenure is denied, then the assistant professor usually has a year to find another job. Candidates for tenure may feel great pressure to get research published. Publish or perish is the traditional saying. An assistant professor who receives tenure becomes an associate professor. An associate professor may later be appointed a full professor. Assistant, associate, and full professors perform many duties. They teach classes, they advise students, and they carry out research. They also serve on committees and take part in other activities. Other faculty members are not expected to do all these jobs. They are not on a tenure track. Instead, they might be in adjunct or visiting positions. A visiting professor has a job at one school but works at another for a period of time. An adjunct professor is also a limited or part-time position to do research or teach classes. Adjunct professors have a doctorate. Another position is that of lecturer. Lecturers teach classes, but they may or may not have a doctorate. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can learn English and stay informed every day from your computer or mobile device at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. Not everyone who teaches in a college or university is a professor. Many are instructors or lecturers. In fact, not even all professors are full professors. Many of them are assistant or associate professors or adjunct professors. So what do all of these different academic titles mean at American colleges and universities? Get ready for a short lecture, especially if you are thinking of a career in higher education. Professors usually need a doctoral degree, but sometimes a school will offer positions to people who have not yet received their doctorate. This person would be called an instructor until the degree has been completed. After that, the instructor could become an assistant professor. Assistant professors do not have tenure. Tenure means a permanent appointment. This goal of greater job security is harder to reach these days. Fewer teaching positions offer the chance for tenure. Teachers and researchers who are hired into positions that do offer it are said to be on the tenure track. Assistant professor is the first job on this path. Assistant professors generally have 5 to 7 years to gain tenure. During this time, other faculty members study the person's work. If tenure is denied, then the assistant professor usually has a year to find another job. Candidates for tenure may feel great pressure to get research published. Publish or perish is the traditional saying. An assistant professor who receives tenure becomes an associate professor. An associate professor may later be appointed a full professor. Assistant, associate, and full professors perform many duties. They teach classes. They advise students. And they carry out research. They also serve on committees and take part in other activities. Other faculty members are not expected to do all these jobs. They are not on a tenure track. Instead, they might be in adjunct or visiting positions. A visiting professor has a job at one school but works at another for a period of time. An adjunct professor is also a limited or part-time position to do research or teach classes. Adjunct professors have a doctorate degree. Another position is that of lecturer. Lecturers teach classes, but they may or may not have a doctorate. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read and listen to our reports at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
I'm Mario Ritter with the VOA Special English Education Report. Some American parents might think their children need better educations to compete with China and other countries. But how much do the parents themselves need to change? A new book called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother by Amy Chua has caused a debate about cultural differences in parenting. Ms. Chua is a professor at the Yale Law School in New Haven, Connecticut, and the mother of 2 daughters. She was raised in the American Midwest by immigrant Chinese parents. In the Chinese culture, the tiger represents strength and power. In her book, Ms. Chua writes about how she demanded excellence from her daughters. For example, she threatened to burn her daughters' stuffed animals unless she played a piece of music perfectly. She would insult her daughters if they failed to meet her expectations. Ms. Chua says she had a clear list of what her daughters, Sophia and Louisa, were not permitted to do. They could not attend a sleepover, have a play date, watch TV, or play computer games, be in a school play, or get any grade less than an A. Many people have criticized Amy Chua. Some say her parenting methods were abusive. She even admits that her husband, who is not Chinese, sometimes objected to her parenting style. But she says that was the way her parents raised her and her 3 sisters. Ms. Chua makes fun of her own extreme style of parenting. She says she eased some of the pressure after her younger daughter rebelled and shouted, "I hate my life, I hate you." Ms. Chua says she decided to retreat when it seemed like there was a risk that she might lose her daughter. But she also says American parents often have low expectations of their children's abilities. She says one of the biggest differences I see between Western and Chinese parents is that Chinese parents assume strength rather than fragility. Stacy DeBroff has written 4 books on parenting. She says the debate over Ms. Chua's book has to do with 2 questions. What does it mean to be a successful parent? And what does it mean to be a successful child? Ms. DeBroff says Amy Chua's parenting style is not limited to Chinese families. She says it represents a traditional way of parenting among immigrants seeking a better future for their children. But she also sees a risk. When children have no time to be social or to follow their own interests, they might not develop other skills that they need to succeed in life. Stacy DeBroff advises parents to develop their own style of parenting and not just repeat the way they were raised. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. What are your thoughts about parenting styles and cultural differences? Tell us at voaspecialenglish.com or on Facebook at VOA Learning English. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. In West Africa, students and teachers are busy with the new school year. However, aid workers say most of the children in northern Mali are unable to go to school. Militants, including some from the group Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, took control of the north in April. The Islamists are enforcing their own severe form of Sharia law in the occupied territory. The United Nations Security Council is urging West African countries to speed up preparations for a military intervention in northern Mali. There are concerns that the conflict might spread to other countries. Large numbers of northerners have fled to the government-held south or to neighboring countries for safety. Tom McCormick is the Sahel director for the aid group Save the Children USA. Save the Children is part of the Education Cluster, a group created by the UN to coordinate the emergency response in Mali. The Education Cluster says the 240,000 students remaining in the north have little or no access to education. Cluster official Joa Keys says this increases the risk of children being recruited as child soldiers. He says children who are not in school are vulnerable to falling into the hands of armed groups. The Education Cluster surveyed 25 organizations in the north. 3/4 of them said local schools had been vandalized or destroyed. Half reported that teachers had fled to the south, and 1/3 said armed groups occupy schools. Human rights groups say the Islamists are actively recruiting children as young as 12 years of age. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Conflicts around the world are keeping tens of millions of young people from going to school. Many have physical or emotional injuries that make it hard or even impossible for them to learn. Later this year, UNESCO will release its 2012 Education for All Global Monitoring Report. UNESCO is the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization. The yearly publication is part of a global campaign to provide primary education to all children within the next 3 years. The report documents the situation in countries that have made the least progress toward the Millennium Development Goals. These goals require universal primary education and equality for boys and girls in schooling by 2015. Pauline Rose is the director of the report. She says at last count, in 35 conflict-affected countries, there were 28 million children out of school. In some countries, schools were not even accessible in conflict zones. There are no teachers, and the schools are sometimes attacked. The Geneva Conventions bar the targeting of public places like schools and hospitals. In some cases, schools are targeted because they represent the government. In other cases, schools are targeted for religious or political reasons. Pauline Rose points to Afghanistan, where militant groups have attacked girls' schools to keep girls from getting an education. In other parts of the world, schools are often caught in the crossfire of violence. Conflicts also put girls and boys at risk of sexual violence and of being forced into war. Under international law, refugees are the only displaced people with a guaranteed right to education. But that guarantee often means little. Last year, Pauline Rose visited camps in northern Kenya that shelter more than 250,000 refugees from Somalia. She says half the children have no access to school, and there are classes of over 300 children. The study asks, what if conflict states in sub-Saharan Africa moved just 10% of their military spending to education? UNESCO says they could educate more than 1/4 of their out-of-school population. And in Pakistan, it says 20% of the military budget could provide primary education for all children. Experts say one country has been a real success story. For years, Botswana has used its wealth from diamond exports to finance universal primary education and to create a skills base for its growing economy. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Lawmakers in Washington are debating education issues, including the interest rates that students pay for loans. College students who take loans graduate owing an average of $26,000. But some economists say the real issue is controlling the cost of college. Experts say these high costs are hurting the whole economy. For the past 30 years, college tuition has been increasing at twice the rate of inflation. Universities say decreasing financial support from state governments forces them to charge higher tuition. On average, private colleges now charge more than $30,000 a year. Terry Hartle is a spokesman for the American Council on Education, which represents thousands of colleges across the United States. He says funding for education has been shrinking for years. Experts worry that the high cost of education makes it less likely that good students from poor families can attend college. This means fewer scientists, engineers, and others who could help increase economic growth. Also, a survey shows that some students concerned about repaying thousands of dollars in loans are delaying marriage and children. Many cannot afford to invest in a house or buy a car. Georgetown University labor economist Anthony Carnevale says the current system cuts economic growth for the whole country, and the effects are important. He says meeting the demand for workers with higher education could add $500 billion to the American economy. A new government report says 1/3 of Americans aged 25 to 29 now hold college degrees, up from 1/4 in 1995. For VOA Learning English, I'm Mario Ritter.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Americans are considering national education standards recently developed by teachers and other education experts. The National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers led the effort. The United States, unlike other nations, has never had the same school standards across the country. The reason? Education is not discussed in the Constitution. That document limits the responsibilities of the federal government. Other responsibilities, like education, fall to the individual states. Local control of education probably was a good idea 200 years ago. People stayed in the same place, and schools knew what students needed to learn. But today, people move to different cities, and some people work at jobs that did not exist even 20 years ago. Many American educators say that getting a good education should not depend on where you live. They say that some states have lowered their standards in order to increase student scores on tests required by the No Child Left Behind Act. Kara Schlosser is Communications Director for the Council of Chief State School Officers. She says the new standards clearly state what a student should be able to do to be successful in college and work. The standards deal with language and mathematics in every grade, from kindergarten through high school. For example, in first grade, students should be asking and answering questions about something they read. In mathematics, students should be working with shapes in kindergarten and angles in fourth grade. 48 states have already shown approval for the standards. 2 states reject the idea. Critics say that working toward the same standards in every state will not guarantee excellence for all. Some educators in Massachusetts say adopting the proposal will hurt their students because the state standards are even higher. Others say the change will be too costly, requiring new textbooks and different kinds of training for teachers. Still others fear federal interference or control. Supporters say the standards are goals and do not tell states or teachers how to teach. They also say the federal government is not forcing acceptance. However, approving the standards will help states qualify for some federal grant money. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Girls and boys usually attend classes together in American public schools. But there are some single-sex programs, like a girls' public school in Dallas, Texas. It opened in 2004. The students have done well enough that the school system is now opening a school for boys. Nakia Douglas is principal of the Barack Obama Male Leadership Academy. He says he was the kind of student that the school is seeking. I was born and raised in South Dallas by a single parent. I was a neighborhood child. I was that child that I would work if I knew the teacher believed in me. But at the same time, I had a hunger and desire for more. Educational researchers say boys learn in different ways and mature more slowly than girls, and are more likely to leave school. Being in class with the opposite sex can also take attention away from learning. Kendall Keeter thinks the boys' school will be good for his son the way the girls' school was for his daughter. Our thought was to also give our son an opportunity that would best prepare him for college in the same manner she was prepared. And I can't imagine any other option that would have prepared her better. Another parent, Madeline Hayes, also likes the idea of a publicly funded school for boys. This is something, as cheesy as it sounds, that I've always dreamed about. That there will be a boys' school that doesn't charge $25,000 a year, but would give the same academics, the same level of interaction and leadership. The school is for grades 6 through 9. It will offer college preparatory classes and leadership courses even on weekends. Principal Douglas says the boys will be urged to support one another. All of our young men we call brother. So it may be Brother Malik Davis or Brother Samuel Keeter. The young men understand they are their brother's keeper. And so the young men are really learning to be responsible, not only for themselves, but also for their brothers here at the campus. Most students who want to be accepted into the Obama Academy in Dallas will need to have good grades and pass a number of tests. But 10 to 15% will not have to meet all of the entrance requirements. Principal Nakia Douglas says they will have to show they have a strong character and a desire to learn. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.